Spotlight on Marketing, brought to us by Armstrong Lloyd. I'm your host, Karen Lloyd, and today we are joined by Juliet Aiken, CMO from Dotdigital. Juliet's journey with Dotdigital is inspiring. Starting as a product marketing manager about 6.5 years ago, she has risen up the ranks and has recently been appointed their CMO. What's particularly fascinating about Juliet's story is how it parallels with the impressive growth of Dotdigital itself. The company's transformation has been remarkable, from its rebranding in 2018 to its expansion into new markets, including Japan and the United States. Juliet has been in the forefront of this evolution, playing a pivotal role, and I'm excited to hear all about it. So absolutely thrilled to have you on the show. Welcome, Juliet.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for the fantastic intro, Karen, and it's exciting to be on the podcast with you today.
Yeah, no, I was saying that we were just saying briefly that I think I first sort of met some of you guys face to face was when we went to an event many years ago, and it was, I think the host at the time was Rob Beckett, and it was the first time I'd ever seen Rob Beckett, and he was really funny, really witty, and then I saw him everywhere. So I think you guys, you have that sort of magic touch. You chose someone.
We've definitely been quite lucky on a couple of occasions with some of the celebs that we've involved in our event. So we like to do two big events every sort of other year. They tend to alternate. One is our summit event, which is largely sort of prospect facing, and then we also have the Dotties Awards, which is more about just celebrating our customer success, which is the one that I think Rob Beckett was invited to. But we've also invited and worked with Ramesh Ranganathan and a few other comedians, and I think we got in there in time before the hype was real. So it was really fantastic to work with him.
Yeah, no, it was the Dotties. Yeah, it was a really great evening, actually. Anyway, so we both also share the love of self-development books, and I know previously you mentioned Radical Candor, and I've just wondered why you think this book is useful and what you particularly liked about it.
Definitely. So with Radical Candor, I picked it up off the back of a former manager's recommendation. And it's such I would say it's probably one of the most useful books on my bookshelf. It's something that I go back to quite a lot. There's highlights and notes all the way through my copy, which helped me sort of pick out the key bits that I found the most useful. I think probably my key takeaway, and something that I like to talk about with my wider team, is that Kim Scott in the book talks about creating a safe space for ideas in the team, which I think is especially important when you work in a function like marketing, which ultimately is a creative function, even though we like to forget that because, we all like talking about data and AI now. So I think that was really important. And she also talks about creating a safe space, not just for creative ideas, but also for constructive conflict, which can sound a little bit can sound a little bit full on, but really just making sure that as a team you've got the openness and the space, and importantly the trust to debate and discuss new ideas. So I think that's something that I've really tried to bring into my team, and it comes down to, as I mentioned, it comes down to trust, and it comes down to your team trusting that everything you do and say comes from a place of good intent. And I think that's really fundamental to ultimately a good relationship at work.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting phrasing, isn't it? Constructive conflict. The word conflict, most people think, I don't like conflict.
Yeah.
I'm one of those. But the word constructive is possible. I suppose they could reframe it to being just like constructive feedback, really, isn't it? But because sometimes we do disagree in a meeting, but for me, that's just a part of brainstorming. Someone going,
absolutely.
oh, well, actually, different idea. Why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do the other? But I suppose, I don't know, when do you think it comes, when does it go from constructive brainstorming and just into conflict?
Well, I think it's making sure that in the room there's a level playing field, making sure, also being aware, I think, of the different personalities that you've got in the room. There will be people who more naturally feel confident to speak up. There will be people who feel less confident. That as especially as a leader in the team or as a manager, you have to think about how you make sure that everyone has a voice, and that you also keep maybe some of the more dominant players in your team at bay, to ensure that some of the more reserved team members get a chance to speak up. And I think that comes with the role of being a leader or a manager or even the meeting facilitator, just to make sure that everyone in the room does have that space,
No,
which is
absolutely.
important. Yeah,
Absolutely.
she uses a lot of interesting words, and yeah, at the end of the day, it's a book, and they have to sell copies as well. But the other concept that's quite interesting in it is, and it's really fundamental to her sort of management framework, if you will. But it's this concept of ruinous empathy, which is all about not giving people the constructive feedback they need to hear, because you're worried about hurting someone's feelings, which ultimately is to the detriment usually of their development if you're not careful. So again, it's just about being honest with people. Which again, if you've got that trust and you know that everyone's there for the right reasons and the intent is good, um, yeah, is usually fine.
Yeah, no, yeah, and it does often. It's a play about culture too, isn't it? So if you're in a safe culture and you've got the right culture right, then that's brilliant. I love
Exactly.
that. So I'm a massive fan of product marketing. It's where I studied my degree, and I was, product marketing has been more of a newer sort of pocket of marketing, and I think it's really interesting to see that you started in product marketing, and then you've moved into that CMO role, which some would say product marketing was quite specialist, but you've obviously moved into that more generalist role. And I wanted to ask you how you see the role of product marketing and how you think it's evolved in the B2B technology companies.
Absolutely. So I think maybe what's somewhat unusual about my background is that I've pretty much from the get-go of my working career started out in product marketing, when it's usually something that people arrive at through a segue or two a little bit later on in their career. And I mean, we can't really say it's a new function anymore, can we? But definitely 5 to 10 years ago, people were very much still saying how new product marketing was. But it's come a very long way. I think I've always seen it as a very it's a strategic, particularly strategic part of sort of the marketing function, because you're close to the product, you're close to your customer, whether it's your customer today or your customer tomorrow, depending on where your business is going. It's a really fundamental part of the wider go-to-market. So I think that's really where its value is, and I think that's and having that knowledge of our customer and our market and the competitive environment that we're in has also enabled me to move into this more generalist CMO role when we decided to merge our product marketing and central marketing team. In terms of where it's going, and this is particularly front of mind because of some of the work that we're doing at Dotdigital, but I'm seeing a lot more in the sort of product marketing content landscape and news landscape about portfolio marketing, and thinking about um, how do you go to market with multiple products. And I think product marketing, it's always been concerned with that product market fit question, but I think it's going beyond that point of that initial point of sale with the customer, but it's actually thinking about how can we better enable cross-sell or upsell between our products throughout the customer lifecycle. So it's not just about that first point of signature, but it's thinking about the end-to-end customer journey. We recently published actually a CMO tracker study, which in which we surveyed over 750 marketing leaders across the world, but focusing on the UK, US, and Australia. And one of the really interesting insights from my perspective was that we saw now 33%, and that percentage is growing. 33% of marketing teams are now considered responsible for the end-to-end customer experience. And I think that speaks to that sort of trend in product marketing as well, where they're not just thinking about product market fit up until the point that the signature is on the paper, but they're also thinking about upsell and cross-sell beyond that point as well.
Yeah, that's still the minority though, isn't it? 33% is still the minority, so it means the others
Yeah.
have still got a long way to go to really see that end-to-end customer process. And I think the customer process and that understanding your customer, I think, has been one of the leaps many companies have made over the last few years, and especially when, like in your organisation, where you've got more than one sales team, perhaps trying different things and different marketing teams, and then they're all siloed. And then if people are targeted where, this one sales team is targeted for that product, then they don't have the incentive to basically sell someone else's product, because they're not going to get anything
Yeah.
from it. And salespeople generally are, a successful salesperson is generally a one track person, when they're certainly earlier in that journey. Maybe a sales leader more differently. So I think it's brilliant that people are beginning to look at that overall picture. And I know there's a lot of companies that have that problem, with that stickiness of their customer, actually, or be able to sell more than one thing to them, because sometimes we're famous for one customer. Like you're famous. I think that brings us on to the nice journey, really, is you were initially famous as a digital marketing. That was what you started an email marketing platform, and then you've basically, a business has evolved. So I'd love to talk about that journey of how you have evolved Dotdigital journey from being Dotdigital from Dotmailer, sorry, to Dotdigital.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been, I think I think I can say literally a quarter century. So this year is quite exciting because it's our 25-year anniversary, which is a really, well, a track record that I think we're all very proud of in the business. We've been around for a long time, and we continue to stay relevant, having been in the market for a long time. So yeah, in a nutshell, our journey has been, we started out as this email service provider, and really moving with the need of our customer base. We developed out our automation capabilities from there. We know there's always pressure on marketing teams to do more with less. So automation naturally is a really key part to being able to do some of that. And then through a couple of acquisitions, one in 2018, and then again the acquisition of Fresh Relevance towards the end of last year, 2023, we were able to expand some of our capabilities further. So we're now further specialized in cross-channel marketing automation, so marketers can automate and deploy campaigns from our platform across not just email, which is what we've been known for in the past, but now also SMS, WhatsApp, social ads, basically the myriad of places where consumers are engaging with brands. And then really the last 5-6 years I've been in the business, it's really all been about data and about AI, and how do we make it easier for customers to make informed decisions off the back of their customer data. So that's been a really exciting development there. And in terms of marketing's role in that has been really key. We've long been established in EMEA as a market, and the UK particularly. But as you mentioned earlier on the podcast here, we are expanding in the wider JPAC region. We're seeing growth in Americas. So we have a new opportunity as being Dotdigital within these markets, which is great. But if you think about EMEA, where we have this heritage and this reputation, obviously having even just the brand name as being Dotmailer was not very helpful, because you can't get people not thinking about email when they hear and see Dotmailer. So making that transition to Dotdigital, also from a brand perspective, was really key. And then there's obviously a bunch of repositioning exercises that have had to come out off the back of that as well.
Because it also really shows how marketing has also evolved in those 25 years. I mean, if you you think about 25 years ago, I just got from uni around that time, and people were still doing direct mail. Email was
Yeah.
even new. Email was like, I didn't even have email on my first job. It was all Unix based. Pressing F1 and emailing wasn't an option. It was just we had to post every day. Someone took something to the post office.
It's mad, yeah. When we've reflected on how much has changed in 25 years, it's quite unbelievable. I think, especially when we were talking about our 25-year anniversary internally, and we're really lucky that we still have, although we've got loads of new team members that join the business, every year. We're, I think, almost 500 people now. So seeing some really good growth in the last few years. We also still have some of our, I think, first employees still in the business as well. So
Right.
we were able to talk to them about what were things like back then when the company was founded. And one of the things that came up is that AdWords didn't exist. I think most marketers today cannot imagine a world in which Google AdWords is not a thing. So just that, I thought that was a really just fun, interesting point to think about.
Well, I set my first recruitment business up in 1999, and we were pioneers to have a website.
Yeah,
We were cutting edge because we had a website. Because everyone else, they
yeah,
were making it this big thing, and people were just becoming online. So it does. But you think, even though we said that product marketing doesn't really feel that new anymore, but it was only around 2020 when people really started. Everyone in 2020 started after COVID started hiring product marketing.
yeah,
Up until that point, some people didn't even know. I was educating people what are the pillars of product marketing and explaining them. A lot of people didn't get it, and some people were even doing product marketing jobs, but they weren't called product marketing. And they were being siloed in that way. So I think it is interesting to look back and reflect just how the whole space has taken, and how data now can be part of it. So what has been your big aha moment then as a marketing leader?
It's a very good question. There's definitely been a few along the way. Before I joined the central marketing function, and I remember I would sit in on the marketing team meetings quite regularly whilst I was still in the product marketing space, and there was a lot of talk about leads and MQLs, and there was such a stark contrast between what I was doing and what the rest of the marketing team seemed to be doing, because I was really close to the roadmap and really close to the development side of things. I was speaking to customers. I was looking at um, customer data and how that data about how they were using and moving through our platform and where they were getting value from. And then, so yeah, in contrast to that, then these conversations about leads to MQLs in the marketing meetings, they seemed so incredibly abstract to me. So I think since having merged product marketing and the rest of the marketing team, and we're now sort of one global centrally managed team, we have in due course, we've been able to sort of pivot that conversation. So we're no longer just talking about leads and MQLs, but we're actually tracking ourselves on marketing triggered opportunities. So once a BDR and AE has had an opportunity to qualify the MQL that we've sent their way, but then even going beyond opportunities, really keeping an eye on and tracking ourselves against the win rate of the opportunities that we're driving, and ultimately also tracking what the value is of the pipeline that we're driving and the value is of the deals that we've won over the course of the year that have come from marketing. And I think this has done a few things. I think it brings us as a wider team closer to our reason for being. It gets you more actively thinking about who we're selling to, who our customer is, but it also massively helps from an internal standpoint, because it means that we actually now have a common language between marketing, sales, and customer success, which we didn't have before. But we're actually now all talking about wins, we're all talking about pipeline, we're all talking about MRR, and striving for the same results. So I think that's been a really big win. Really long way round of coming back to what maybe that aha moment was, but I've been challenged along the way, and we've still got some people in the business that want to know what our MQLs look like, etc. And I was speaking to a consultant, and I'm sure this will be a somewhat controversial standpoint, but he said to me, yeah, but they have no business with MQLs because they don't understand it. And that might sound a little bit extreme. So whilst we do track leads and MQLs, and I think they are interesting metrics for us as a marketing team to understand, is not something that I, having taken his viewpoint there on board, is not something that I really externalize, because we do control those metrics through lead scoring and other such practices. So yeah, I think that they're marketing KPIs for me, or indicators. I wouldn't even call them KPIs, but in terms of how we speak to the rest of the business, it's ops, it's wins, it's revenue.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Because the thing is even a lead, or not all leads are equal, are they? You know, sometimes say, "Oh, I got 50 leads," but you think, yeah, what it could be a lead is that somebody just clicked on a diary link. That's not the
Yeah,
same as a somebody that basically put their hand up and said, "I want to know more about your product."
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So very good. Brilliant stuff. I like it. Really interesting, actually. And I love the fact that everybody across the business is all aligned with the metrics and the terminology. I think that's the key factor.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's taken some time, but we got there in the end.
Yes. So I think it's great that we mentioned external stakeholders, and there's other stakeholders within the business as well that are key. You know, what would you say the importance of marketing having that connection with their C-suite's peers? How important is that?
Super important. I think um, for me, marketing is part of go-to-market. It has to be, right? So I think the relationship between marketing, sales, and customer success leaders is absolutely fundamental. As you know, we're all in charge of revenue ultimately at the end of the day, and I think by focusing on that pipeline value, bringing awareness also that you know the dynamics in in the funnel aren't always of equal proportion. So you know we've been able to demonstrate over time that even though we are logging, so to speak, fewer MQLs, our ops numbers are stable or increasing. So I think what that helps us do is show that actually by focusing more at the task at hand of growing our business and growing the value of our customer base, um, we've been able to drive efficiency within the marketing team, which ultimately has a positive knock-on effect on things like the cost of customer acquisition and all of those other metrics that also things like obviously our CFO care about and are looking at. So I think by driving that focus and efficiency within the funnel, I think there's a range of metrics that yeah, revenue leaders, CFO and others in the C-suite can get behind and can therefore also see the value of marketing.
Because I suppose the different C-suites are almost like different personas, really, aren't they? Because they care about different things. So sales care about one thing, and CFOs care about something else. And you think,
Absolutely.
how do you juggle their two different needs? It's an unfair question, perhaps.
It's I think the way that my team, the way we've structured our goals and objectives for the year means that we have a different almost like growth pillar that we can speak to each sort of key C-suite stakeholder with. The first departmental objective is centered on the growth of how we grow our pipeline. So that's revenue, that's numbers. That's something that obviously with our GMs we can speak about because that's ultimately what they're looking at and what they're targeting their teams on. Our second departmental objectives looks at our opportunity to win conversion rate. So it's looking at driving efficiency. So that's where the conversation around ROI comes in, which again is something that our CFO, for example, will care about. And then our third departmental objective is centered on revenue retention within our customer base. So that's where everything to do with customer marketing comes in, making sure that customers see the value of the platform, that that we are able to track the breadth with which customers are adopting what is now a quite a sprawling platform with a ton of functionality. And that's where, for example, we will connect with our product team and our CPO on because they want to know that we are driving interest in our product or products within our customer base. So I think by aligning their needs against objectives that make sense to us as a department as well, we've got some nice coverage there.
Yeah, it sounds brilliant. And in terms of that balance, because we're talking a lot about data, metrics, and customer, how do you balance that with the what we talked about, the creativity in marketing? How do you balance the being a creative function with the data? And have you got any examples where data has led to maybe a creative outcome?
Very good question. It's not easy. That's for sure. I think. It sounds very simple, but it's very hard to do. I think you really just need to make time for creativity, unfortunately. And I think when it comes to creative thinking, what I will often ask my teams to do when we do, for example, our quarterly look backs is, sure, let's do a look back. We look at the numbers, we look at what we've achieved in terms of our initiatives, what's outstanding, what do the priorities look like for the next quarter. But I also like to ask the teams to really think about, now, what would you do differently? And I think that's where some of that creative ideation can come from, because you can decide to do things differently because in reaction to something, because something's not worked or you've learned something, which is fine. But you can also make a decision to do something differently because I think as marketers we need to test new things. The rules of marketing are constantly being rewritten, is something that's become very apparent in the last definitely 5 years for me. So we can't rest on our laurels. We can't hope that our tricks and tactics from last year are still going to work for us this year and the year ahead. And I think one of the maybe other trends to touch on in industry, and I think something that particularly SaaS businesses will be feeling, is we are we are probably, in my opinion, dealing with the most diverse buyer group yet. I think the generational divide is bigger than ever. We obviously, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, you were selling to maybe a mix of baby boomers and millennials and etc. But I think now with Gen X coming into the fold and having such distinctively different expectations, both as consumers but also as buyers within the B2B space, I think we're having to cater for a whole wider range of just doing things differently. So hence, I think that need for just change and innovation is something that needs to be always on.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Actually, it was just making my brain, yeah, think about actually how deep you're going on that side of things. Actually, and would you say that those different levels of category of personality traits you build, would you say they're different to different buyer personas, or would you say you've even got within one persona, say you're targeting marketing, you're trying to encompass all of those different layers within it? Or would you say different personas probably have different age categories and personalities?
I think it's, 'cause you almost end up with needing a pivot table, right? In terms of how you go to market and how you speak to people. We're not that far along yet. We definitely think of the buyer personas that we have. So we talk about, for example, we have our CX champions, we have our practitioners who are the day-to-day users of the platform, and then we have what we call system specialists who tend to be more technical personas, people who are more involved when it comes to thinking about how our marketing technology integrates with the rest of their tech stack. But then, yeah, as we've just spoken about now, there's that whole other layer to thinking about how you speak to what people care about, which is probably based on their preferences on how they want to communicate with you and how they want to do business with you. So I think the former, thinking about sort of our traditional personas, points to the what information do you give them, what do you lead with, what's your messaging. Whereas if we're thinking about generational trends and tendencies, I think it comes down more to your business processes and the channels that you're communicating with them on. So there's almost different action points there and activation points for different parts of your team. So I think, going back to thinking about product marketing, they're probably again more focused on the former, whereas someone in a marketing operations function or someone in a campaigns marketing function might actually be more interested in taking that messaging from the product marketer, but actually thinking about how do they activate it across the channels that the various almost like generational personas are active on. I was at an event, Technology for Marketing, last week, and uh, one of the really interesting things to see was how much engagement there was on TikTok about the event, for example, and how people are using that really as a way to learn about what's happening within a B2B marketing event. And that surprised me.
Interesting, because there's an event coming up actually in November, and TikTok are one of the speakers. Actually, it's a Martech event, so it's interesting to see that. Yeah, so but it is because I always think of my children have TikTok. They're in their 20s, and
Yeah.
I sometimes say, "How do you know that?" And they're like, "Oh, we saw it on TikTok," and I'm like, "I still can't get to grips with TikTok." To be fair, I find it. I can see when it's a TikTok video, but I'm still an old-fashioned Facebook person. But so that's what I can see what you're saying. There's different platforms for different, definitely for different areas across the board. Especially a lot of your customers will be B2C focused customers as well,
Yeah.
won't they? So that they will even be embracing that. So in terms of as we're talking about incorporating other areas, I mean, how have you've talked a bit about incorporating AI? Is there anything
hmm
that you've either incorporated your product or into your marketing strategy, that anything exciting that's AI focused that you feel is really making a game changing difference?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's twofold. Obviously, there's Open AI and Gen AI capabilities that everyone's been tapping into and using, and I think we've definitely found it useful in brainstorming sessions within the team, or even just when it comes to just having a springboard for a particular discussion point, or even just in copywriting, we've definitely used it just to get some ideas going. So there's a very sort of, I think, fluid use case across the areas of team collaboration and content marketing. I think what I look forward to is using AI more within the space of video marketing, which is something that I've heard and seen other marketers do more of. So I think that's something that we're looking to get our teeth into next. But maybe a little bit closer to home is the fact that we have AI capabilities integrated into the Dotdigital platform, and it's not always the case, amazingly, in B2B SaaS. But I am proud to say that we, as a marketing team, use our own platform for our marketing. So I think that means obviously that we are we're customer zero in a way. So we often get access to new functionality as it comes on. And so again, when we launched, as we call it, Winston AI, I think I might get it wrong now. I was going to say a year, but it's probably longer than that now. When we launched Winston AI, I think maybe a couple of years ago now, we were one of the first to be able to use it. So there's various components to it. On the one hand, it helps us from a campaign creation perspective. So we can ask Winston AI to rewrite a campaign for us in a certain tone of voice. If we want it to, we can ask Winston AI based on the analytics available sort of in aggregate across all of our accounts to recommend subject lines that it thinks will resonate better with our audience. These are seemingly small tasks in the marketer's day to day that can actually be quite time consuming. So that's just been a really nice natural way for us to integrate that Gen AI capability into our own campaigns. But then we also offer predictive segmentation in the platform. So it will look at our audiences, it will look at how people are engaging with certain types of content based on our tags, based on what is featured in certain campaigns, and it will recommend certain audiences that are worthwhile retargeting to an objective that we have in the future. So I think it's just been a lot of fun playing with the more sort of predictive side of AI as well, which is newer to the platform.
I think that especially the segmentation, actually, it always stuns me because I think segmentation is quite simple, really. You think, you take a market, but there's so many ways you could dice and splice and analyze it. And sometimes if you're a generalist marketer and you're doing the end to end campaign, you're doing everything, you end up just banging the campaign out and just
Yeah.
going, right, it's done now. Let's see what the results are. So to be able to then have hey, have you thought of this pocket or this next campaign? It just brings that continuous cycle, isn't it? Because even people that love marketing, you do burn out doing the same thing over and over again, and you do need a bit of inspiration or something to just prompt you, really, if you're having a funny day.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing how much segmentation still comes up, and I think a lot of marketing teams are still a little bit apprehensive when it comes to using segmentation, almost because we're spoiled for choice, and you might have hundreds of data fields within your account that you can go and segment and filter on, and it's almost like where do you start? And via which route, and am I going to get the most bang for my buck in effort terms, really. And I think that's where AI and predictive segmentation is really valuable, because it gives you a steer on where to start, which is really just informed by your own data.
It's exciting to see that if you've been running that for 2 years, that's well ahead of what all the other AIs are now offering, aren't they? And that's a thing. But you've had that 2 years ago. That really was, at that time, that really was a game changer, actually.
Yeah, we were quick in there, I have to say. I remember actually it came about very quickly as well, because I think it actually started with, I think, something that our products and technology teams were working on sort of under the hood, without too many people knowing about it. And our CPO sort of messaged me and our head of product marketing at the time to say, yeah, we've got all of these AI capabilities now. Can we launch it in 4 days? So that was fun. So we had to think on our feet, but the adoption from within our customer base has been incredible, and I think that's where UI has been really important. So we've really been very careful about how do we incorporate AI into the workflow of our customers and our users in the platform, so that it's a natural thing for them to adopt and use, versus something that they need to really seek out and remember to do. It just becomes a natural part of their workflow.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, the time has gone so quickly. We're nearly to the end. But is there anything that I haven't asked you that you wanted to talk about, that you think would be really useful, particularly anything about shining the light on the commercial value of marketing?
Great question. I think so. You can probably tell I'm quite passionate about the strategic function that I believe marketing should be. It's actually thinking all the way back to my uni days. I've almost come full circle, really, because what I wrote my dissertation on at the time was I analysed what the relationship was between the role of marketing in a business and shareholder value. So I did this like content analysis of hundreds of annual reports to try and decipher, companies that are actually talking about marketing in sort of at that C-suite level and with their board. How does that impact the valuation of the business? And it was really interesting, the outcomes of that. So I guess sort of my journey has maybe been somewhat reflective of that sort of ambition, which has been great. But I think something that I still see holds a lot of marketing teams back is that there is this lack of perceived influence across the rest of the business, and it can still be quite a siloed function. So maybe taking a lesson out of the product marketing rulebook, and as you said, there's tons of people doing product marketing, whether they have it in their job title or not, it really doesn't matter. But I would just say I think it's really important that marketers know their products. They need to know what they're selling and its value, and you need to know your customer. And I try to encourage my team always as well, get out into the market, whether they're trade shows or there's a ton of meetups happening. Go and speak to people and would-be customers and understand what's happening on the ground, because I think in my experience, when I've been able to demonstrate that I know our product and I know our customer, I've typically been met with open arms when it comes to getting involved in some of those GTM or sales and CS leadership discussions. And I think that as a function, marketing stands to benefit there.
And actually, I think you're one of the most unique propositions, because you are your customer as well, because you're using it. As you say, you're customer zero. So you're like, we use this product. We are actually a customer.
That goes a long way. So we've arguably got it a little bit easier, as that it's definitely to our own benefit to know what our platform does.
Yeah, no, but I think that's testament to any company that can actually use their own product for their own business integration for whatever their purposes. I think it is an amazing testament to say. Brilliant. So, well, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed talking to you today as we wrap up the session. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights. And thank you for tuning in and listening to the Spotlight of Marketing. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do subscribe, rate and review the podcast. And don't forget to share it with your colleagues and friends in the marketing community. But until next time, keep shining the spotlight on the power of marketing and driving your business growth.